at the very least, he has this thing. He inherited a mess, and he has it turned in a positive direction. Would you agree?
Yeah, when you and I first talked about it, I had questions too. I mean, he had never been a general manager before. The only thing I remember telling you is every step of the way, whether it's been Harbor Center or running the academy over there or getting into the front office, he hadn't done any of that stuff before. And he excelled at all of it because he's the type of guy that he goes and finds out, how do you become successful at this job? How do you do this job well? And every step of the way he has done well, even though he hadn't done those jobs before. So it doesn't surprise me that so far he's been successful at this job. And what did you do first? Went to Brandon Beane and said, look, I realize it's football, but what did you guys do to turn around your organization? How do you become a winning organization? Those types of things are all the types of themes. And we, again, have talked about this many times. A lot of what the Sabres are doing is a lot of what the Bills did and had in place. So that's what he does. He goes and he talks to a lot of people, even with trades or whatever. He might not even want to make the trade, but he wants to have the talks because he can learn something from every time he has a conversation about different parts of the job. And he talks to a lot of different people about it so he can gather information and then develop what he wants to develop.
I remember, Paul, you and I going into that locker room in what was it, 06, at Sabres Hurricanes in that conference final. And, and the rest of the Hurricanes had kind of razz him a little bit. And, oh, here we go, because he's the Clarence native, and here comes the Buffalo media. They were having a good time with it. But I remember him as a player, and I just liked him. And he had like that leadership. You could just sense the leadership DNA. When you're around enough athletes and pro athletes, you can tell the ones that kind of have it, and he just kind of bleeds it. So in that sense, it has, for him, in my opinion, combined with his intelligence, translated to being a successful executive, or really the potential to take that next step and be a very successful one.
We'll go back to that team. Their head coach right now is Rod Brindamore, who basically ran that team for him on the ice. I mean, he was one of the big reasons they won the Stanley Cup. Adam still talks to him. Talks to a very successful coach, and they're still in touch. They're still good friends. So it's not just that he talks to people in Buffalo. He talks to people all over the league to try to develop himself to try to be the best he can be. And he's not this guy that says it's got to be this way or the highway. I mean, he listens. He opens his ears, keeps his mouth shut, and he listens to other people to maybe we can do it a little bit better than we're doing it.
So the last thing I'll ask you is that Eichel situation, right? Here he is, comes in as GM, and he's just right into the hornet's nest on that one. And Jack's pretty much doing everything, almost to spite himself, to lessen Adams' leverage, to get him to move him out of there and everything. Just the way that whole thing was handled. But I thought Adams held his ground, and I know we've talked about this before. He waited for Krebs in that deal. He was not gonna make a deal that hurt this organization long term. He was they could potentially get back 4 good, really, really good players for him at the end of the day. That's a hell of a return. To me, that's where I saw him navigate that, and I said, okay, this guy can be a really good GM.
Because everybody's going to try to take advantage of a new GM, and everybody tried to take advantage of him. And he said, no, this is what we think it's worth. This is what we are going to get. And until somebody decides that they want to give us that young player that we negotiate and that we want, then we're just going to wait. And finally, it was Vegas that blinked, and he wound up getting Krebs out of the deal. And quite honestly, Eichel would have been traded anyway. Even if this injury didn't happen, he wasn't going to remain a Buffalo Sabre. He didn't want to be here. They tried to appease him like they'd done the whole time he was here by signing Taylor Hall, he and Kruger. That didn't work. And I think Adams just said, enough. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just not. If he wants to be here, fine. We'd love to have him. But if he doesn't, let's get him out of here. And so he was going to be gone anyway, whether there was an injury or not.